Mr Chair.
I call the Honourable Minister Maurice Williamson.
Mr Chairman, given this is a new Parliament and the first reading and subsequent select committee hearings were held under another Parliament, I think there's a couple of points that I really think are worth making to members so they understand a little bit of the history. First of all, it was a Labor government in the late 1980s and late 89-90 that introduced the Building Act. And they introduced that under Margaret Austin. She brought the bill into the Parliament. It went off to the Select Committee. The Building Bill. Well, the Building Bill became a Building Act. The Building Bill, and it was only short of its third reading by the time the 1990 election occurred. And so straight after the 1990 election, the National Government, who had supported Labor's bill, put it through its third reading. So we need to be a little bit careful about blaming the National Government for that deregulation and passing of that Act. It was a Labor bill introduced by a Labor minister, taken through a select committee while Labor were in government, brought back to the House and put through the committee of a whole under a Labor government, and only given its third reading by a National Government. So let's get that clear. And in fact, I've got a number of great quotes from Hansard where George Hawkins gets stuck into National MPs. Don't you try claiming credit for the Building Act. It was ours. It was ours, says George Hawkins. I've got the quotes if you want to see them. So George was on the rantan in the early 2000s, claiming that dreadful National Government had been trying to claim that it being theirs. And so I give acknowledgement to the Honourable Margaret Austin and the Labor Government for bringing that bill in. The next one I've heard a number of members quite often refer to as the National Government's decision to allow untreated timber. So let's get that clear. The decision to allow kiln-dried timber and not make treated timber mandatory came nowhere near this building. It didn't come to a minister. It didn't come to a select committee. It didn't come to a member of Parliament. The decision was taken by an independent body called Standards New Zealand that a minister has no direction over. And the two big big timber companies, Fletcher's and Carter's, both lobbied Standards New Zealand for them to say, we will say that kiln-dried timber is an acceptable solution under the code that stood at the time. That's what they said. Yes, they did. Yes, they did. That's what they asked for. And if you read the report in 1995, the report is actually quite clear. It actually is all about Bora. And I find it amazing. If you want to have a read of it, it's a really good read, Miss Dalzell. It would really inform your knowledge. It actually says Bora is no longer an issue, and therefore we no longer need to treat this timber. Kiln-dried will be an acceptable solution for all framing, including exterior walls. Yes, it does. Yes, it does. And so in 1995, I'm happy to bet the member the best bottle of Sauvignon Blanc going on this one. In 1995, kiln-dried timber became an acceptable solution under the building code for building buildings. Now, it turned out that was a disaster. But I want members of this House to be very, very careful of blaming any politician, because I've heard it was ministers that decided it. I've heard it was the Select Committee that agreed to it. I've heard it was various MPs. I've even heard certain MPs who were not even related to the portfolio blamed for it, myself included, who wasn't anything to do with the portfolio back then. But if you research history, you will see Standards New Zealand had a subcommittee they set up. That subcommittee in 1995 recommended that kiln-dried timber now be an acceptable solution under the building code, and local authorities accepted that, and from that point on, we built buildings with kiln-dried timber. Not always. Some builders were a little bit more good builders, I think, made a decision they wouldn't do that, but others said they thought that because it was now acceptable under the building code as an acceptable solution, they did it. And we paid the price for a long time, and there's going to be a huge bill for it. But I just wanted to get members very clear on that. National didn't pass the building bill. That was a Labor bill, and actually it wasn't any member of Parliament, anybody, myself included, who actually allowed kiln-dried timber as an acceptable solution.
I call the Honourable Member Andrew Williams.
I rise on behalf of